Thank you for returning to my channel, Anthracite Horror Stories. You may notice above my flame safety lamp I have a replica D&H Anthracite coal sign. This was the Delaware and Hudson Coal Company logo. And previously they were owned by the Delaware and Hudson Railroad, and the companies were broken up due to antitrust laws. This coal company means a lot to me because my grandfather worked for the D&H Railroad. He ended up being yard master in the Hudson Yard in Plains Township. And the first mine I got involved in with this hobby was owned by the D&H. And I just absolutely love that railroad. But to work for the D&H coal mines back in the day, you were risking your life just like any other mine. And unfortunately tonight, this is the mine in question. I'm zooming in. This is the Cunningham breaker in Colliery, which was owned by the D&H. You can see the shaft. It looks like it was being built because you can see a superstructure up there, a crane. I've seen in other photos when they would erect these breakers and subsequent shaft headframes, they would use that style of crane back in the day. It was just like pulleys. Well, this looks like a 3-compartment shaft. Let's see, 1, 2, and 3. I'm assuming it's 3-compartment. Here you have the fan. You can see the steam coming out. Breaker, powerhouse, small coal pile, and auxiliary buildings. Narrow gauge rail going to and from the headframe. But again, that looks like it's under construction, or maybe they were retrofitting. They could have been retrofitting it maybe to steel from wood. They misspelled this. I can't get a zoom on that, but it's misspelled. There you go. Should be Cunningham, C-O-N-Y, not C-O-U. I don't know what they're doing there. Cunningham, that spelling was a Protestant Scotch-Irish version. Cunningham with a C-U is the Irish Catholic spelling. And you really didn't have Catholics in the late 1800s, especially early 1900s, in any type of ownership role, because yeah, they were kind of the underclass. And then came the Poles and Slavs after the Irish, who were the next underclass, followed by the Italians. This coal company, the family, I know one member, very nice woman, she's awesome. The family of Hillside Farms, they were the Cunninghams. The Cunningham mansion is there. They called it their cabin, and it's a mansion. But I think they had like 500 plus acres. So yeah, Hillside Farms is owned by the Cunningham family. And I believe also EBSCO, Eastern Penn Supply Company, was, and I don't know if it still is owned by that family, but that was a general store where the miners purchased their supplies for blasting, drills, drill bits, black powder, etc. They actually have an EBSCO in North End section of Wilkes-Barre. That's where this colliery was. I think it was near McCarthy Tire on Wilkes-Barre Boulevard. If you notice the one road, it's called Cunningham Ave, and that's after the same gentleman, and undoubtedly the breaker. So I'll get into the article here as I'm rambling. I apologize. I get this from the U.S. Association for Mine Rescue. Link is in description. Also, you know what? Check out northernfieldinfo.net. That is such a great website. I'm going to put that in the description. That has all the detailed year-to-year operations, period correct photos, articles, inspector narratives. In 1938, 1939, they were flying around the valley taking, for its time period, high definition photos from the air. the Pen Pilot program, of all the colliery sites. So it's a really cool website. Check out northernfieldinfo.net. Now, this gentleman on U.S. Mine Rescue Association got their source from the Tyrone Daily Herald out of Pennsylvania, and it's dated April 27, 1905. It's entitled, 10 Miners Killed, Plunged to Death Down Shaft by Breaking of Cage Rope. And again, this would be the shaft in question, unfortunately. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, April 27. 10 miners were instantly crushed to death at the Cunningham mine of the Delaware and Hudson Company, located in the northern part of the city. The men were being lowered into the mine, and when 350 feet from the surface, the rope broke and the cage fell to the bottom of the shaft, a distance of 400 feet. A rescuing party was at once organized, and they found the bodies of the men in the sump at the bottom of the shaft, beneath a mass of debris. They were terribly mangled. Most of the victims live in the vicinity of the mine. When the rescuers brought the crushed forms to the surface, a large crowd was in waiting. The grief of the relatives of the dead was heart-rending. Superintendent Foote says he is at a loss to account for the accident. An examination of the rope was made before the first cage of human freight was lowered into the mine, and it was found to be all right. William Cunningham, this is the Irish Catholic spelling, C-U, not C-O. Article continues, who is said to be one of the most reliable men in the employ of the company, was the engineer in charge of the hoisting carriage. He says everything went well until the fatal trip. He got the signal to lower and stop the Hillman vein, which is 350 feet from the surface. When the Hillman vein was reached, he slowed up. Without any warning, the rope snapped and the carriage containing the 10 men dropped like a shot to the bottom. The carriage had all the safety appliances, and its speed should have been checked before it reached the bottom. But as far as can be learned, the catcher did not work. 8 of the dead were Poles, and 2 other English-speaking miners. The English-speaking miners were Charles Rochelle, married with a family. Frank Barney, married with a family. The other victims were August Zachary, John Jovetsky, Henry McGraw, Anthony Ziblick, Lawrence Warnick, Jonas Manadonic, Michael Zaintus, John Chase. All the foreigners except one were married and leave large families. The coroner has begun an investigation as to the cause of the accident. This is the 3rd accident of a similar nature that has occurred in the Wyoming region within 6 months. In each case, the rope attached to the carriage broke and the men on it were dashed to the bottom of the shaft and instantly killed. The first disaster occurred at the Auchincloss mine, in which 10 miners lost their lives. 6 weeks ago, at a cage at the Clear Spring Colliery, I think that might have been the Sullivan Trail in West Pittston. If anybody knows, let me know. The article continues. Fell, and 7 men were killed. And the last 10 victims makes the total number killed by ropes breaking and carriages falling to 27. That's the end of the article. I mean, 1905 here. They're talking about again, this is very common in all my stories. Verbatim. They were terribly mangled. I mean, that's nice to release to the public and have the families and friends and co-workers read that. They talked about how human freight instead of, like workers. Of course, the coal company is going to say, "Oh yeah, the rope was fine." Obviously, these wire ropes were braided. They still use them in head frames and steep slopes, slopes of all types. In fact, they're just braided wire rope, and stress fractures can occur. I don't know what the active mines, how often they have to change out the ropes, but they do have to change out the ropes. pretty often. The Lackawanna coal mine tour, because you're going down a slope on a man trip car. I don't know if they have to swap that out every year or a few years. You can rotate the ropes to mitigate wear and stress. But I didn't know that the vertical shafts had catchers. So obviously it would have been like an emergency brake system that you see in an elevator today. I think that like a sidearm would swing out and catch physically. But yeah, they're just like, oh, it didn't work, and they were all killed. But what bothers me is this. They were talking about how 8 of the dead were Poles. So in 1905, the Irish Catholics were not really that despised in the area as much as they were in, say, like the 1850s till about 1900. It was the Poles' turns. My great-grandfather, Mike Marciniak, in 1902, when he started working for the Dorrance, again, I have his actual miner's certificate, it says Mike Martin, and he Anglo-Saxonized his name because getting a job as a Pole, you'd have some sort of difficulty there. But they literally, it literally broke down. You can see the article here. This is from the actual article. The English-speaking miners' war. And it just says the other victims. These guys didn't speak English. It's pretty terrible. All the foreigners except one were married and leave large families. So God bless them. The Conyngham Colliery, you even recognize it. Like I said, I believe McCarthy Tire and Auto is right over it. But this had a lot of disasters just from giving it a quick glance. So unfortunately, I'll be covering more of those in the future. May God have mercy on those victims' souls, because flying down that vertical haulage shaft and impacting that water had to have been a hell of a death. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to subscribe.